Hey, and welcome back to another episode of the Online Ministry Podcast. My name's Tyler.
My name's Megan.
And we are your hosts today, and we are really excited to talk about really a brand new way that we're trying out discipleship that we've seen some pretty incredible results from so far.
Yeah.
So let's just go ahead and dive right in.
Welcome to the Online Ministry Podcast, powered by Church Anywhere. Here are your hosts, Megan and Tyler.
Megan, today we're going to be talking about something that we're calling Next Step Guides.
Yeah.
Still not thrilled about that name yet. It sounds too corporate, but it's fine.
It's a lot better than some of the other options.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Don't even get me started on walking buddies.
No.
It's a new way of doing discipleship for us, at least. If you've heard any of our other material, you've heard that we believe in relational discipleship.
Absolutely.
And so I want you to kind of walk us through how we got to this point, and then we can actually talk about some more strategic things.
Yeah. So I think a biggest way we got to this point was, I think overall, not just our church, but a lot of churches kind of struggle with discipleship. I mean, it's not a very easy thing because somebody walking with Christ can be very difficult. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be just peachy and hunky-dory. And so
what are some ways that you've noticed, I'm going to use the term failure here,
Okay.
and it probably sounds harsher than I mean it to, but what are some ways that you've noticed the failure for the American church in the area of discipleship over the years?
I think we put a lot of our hope in programs. And so just creating a program that lasts for 6 weeks and then hoping that that's going to help them just do.
Yeah,
and
be a follower.
Yeah. And I think that while programs can work and they do have good things, like a part of them, it's not setting them up for success in the long run.
Right. So you got this whole generation of people beyond this whole multitude of Christians across the country that have been discipled by 4 to 6 week segments. And if you attend, that means you've been discipled. And then we had something like 2020 hit,
Right.
where there was this convergence of all of the racial reconciliation piece, all of COVID.
Right.
And then we had this election happen.
Yeah.
And it became, at least to me, extremely evident with how Christians responded, literally to all three of those things, that the Jesus that we're trying to disciple them towards isn't necessarily the what they are acting out in their regular lives.
Right.
I think they're being discipled by the media that they consume.
Mm-hmm.
They're being discipled by the influences that are around them a lot more than they are by the Jesus of the Bible that we believe in.
Yeah,
So we knew something had to change.
absolutely.
Walk me through your thought process on this next step guide idea.
Yeah. The thought process was all over the place. I feel like I knew that something needed to happen and we needed to have something for people, especially in our church after they get baptized. That's a huge milestone. And so we were trying to think of, well, how does that work? How can we make something available for them to help them grow after that step? Because sometimes it's you get baptized. All right, great. Well, figure it out.
I think a lot of churches even think that being baptized, well, that's the end of our journey.
Right.
We made it. Woo!
Yeah.
That was the mountaintop.
Yeah.
You got baptized.
And so we totally
go get in a
switched
class.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. To make it, that's just the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the start. And so if we can take that and have almost a launching pad that they can go and put somebody next to them as a support system.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of where I think a lot of it started from, and it started to grow.
It did. So this is the Online Ministry Podcast.
Yep.
Many of our viewers and listeners will know that both of us have extensive experience in online ministry.
Right.
But what we're talking about here is truly, this is for you, Kenny Jang, fidgetal.
Yes.
I'm going to say it 3 times in a row. It's like Beetlejuice, fidgetal. And then Jeff Reed pops up behind us, I think is how that works.
Gross. Yeah.
It's truly a fidgetal way of doing discipleship because when you pair relational discipleship with really anything, with anything, there are all kinds of different tools that you can use both in person and online to make that happen. So somebody comes through the baptistry waters here in the building.
Yep.
Is it any different than if they come through the baptistry waters through an online connection or a microsite?
Right. No. The only difference would be just depending on what that microsite is. We are starting to work to kind of
like tailor it.
Yeah, tailor it to each area so that they can have the most success in that.
Sure.
And so right now they get baptized, and then if they're in the building, they come back and we have like their communion with them for the first time on this side of the water. And we'll sit with them and we'll set them up with the next step guide. If it was someone at a microsite or another location that wasn't in the building, we would still try to do that. We would still try to set them up with somebody that they can walk alongside.
Yeah. So we keep using these terms like next step guide and things like that. Let me briefly go over what that is.
Yeah.
So we've talked about relational discipleship and everything like that, but we literally are trying to 100% of the time pair someone who becomes a new follower of Jesus, whether that's through deciding to get baptized or someone who just approaches us and says, like, I need help walking in my new journey. We're pairing them 1-for-1 with someone that will walk beside of them every single day and help them take a step closer to Jesus every single day. Now, where the digital tools come into place is that we have created a way to outfit them with the resources that we believe will help them for 6 weeks. So these are long-term relationships, but we are outfitting them with 6 weeks worth of everyday material that we can walk them through as their next step guide. Yeah. How have you seen, what are some success stories that you've seen from this so far?
Yeah, it's been really cool just to hear. There's some people who started this back in, I think, December, and they're still walking with their people today, which I think is awesome. That friendship grew. We try to connect them with people who already have common interests and have things that they can connect on a different level so that it builds that.
Yeah.
So seeing that, and then even ones that maybe have struggled a little bit or they haven't been as consistent, but then we've come back and, we've been praying for them. And then we hear even just this week that one of the guys reached out to him, and so he got to connect with him even more. And I think that's an awesome.
What does the actual content of this look like? So we do it through a website.
Right.
So if someone gives their life to Christ and they're connected with this next step guide, then the person that is the guide, they get one version of the website, and the person that's the next stepper.
I don't know. We don't have a name for that.
The person that's the new Jesus follower also gets a website, but they run parallel to each other, correct?
Yeah, so they get, like the guide, we explain in more detail of this is why we're doing this. It's the why behind it, and that we believe that by connecting them with someone else, they're going to have more success than if they were trying to do this on their own. So we talk through that piece, and then it kind of has steps for them, and it's more of a resource than like a checklist. Like, you don't have to just check off everything, because you need to see what you and that person together, what fits best for your schedules, what fits best for your personalities, and then go from there. So we put a lot of different resources on there so that they have different options. We don't want them to feel like it's just something they have to check off and then be done.
If you didn't listen to our latest episode about spiritual outfitting, this might sound a little confusing, but essentially what you've done is you've put a bunch of things on aisles, and these next step guides can kind of walk through and pick up which ones are working and continue with those.
Yep.
Some of the actual practical content on there are things like watching The Chosen.
Yeah.
Through the grace of God, we have been connected with the people who make The Chosen.
Yeah.
And they've been an awesome resource.
Absolutely.
And so we really try to push new believers to fall in love with Jesus in a way that's like a lot more practical. They might not have great biblical understanding yet, but The Chosen does a really good job of showing them who Jesus is. Yeah. And so, like, one of the weeks that we want next step guides to walk their next stepper through is they would watch an episode of The Chosen for the first season together. But on the guide side of that, digitally, we give them questions to text to their people every day that has to do with what they're watching. We curated things like the Bible Project, the Bible app, reading plans, and all of that good stuff. But then we also got really creative.
Yeah. So
talk to us a little bit about like our part in what we've created to put on these shelves.
Yeah, so one of the pieces that they walk through is kind of a how to live it out series. So rather than like...
And this is 1 week, correct?
Yeah, this is one of the weeks. And so it's about, I think, 5 different videos, and we had different pastors come and speak into them. And they're really short, so they're easy to watch. And they're just really practical tips for new believers and how to read the Bible or how to pray or why community is important or generosity. Like they hit on all these topics that should be rhythms of our life. And so it gets the next step guide to talk to them, say, okay, you watch these videos, what's going to be the hardest one for you? What's going to be the easiest one? And then it starts to put those things almost in practice. Like how can you take one of those and put it into your life today and walk through that?
And some of those elements are spiritual rhythms like prayer.
Yeah.
Some of them are generosity in like a deeper way than they normally would think of it, things like that, which I think is twofold. It helps both the next stepper.
Oh, absolutely.
Keep saying that's going to stick.
It's going to stick now.
Fidgetal. Jeff still didn't pop up.
Yeah. Next time.
It helps both the person that got baptized, but it also helps the next step guide because it's a reminder, and it's also an opportunity for them to lead out in something.
Yeah.
So maybe they weren't generous before, but now that they have had a chance to teach somebody else about generosity, they become generous and it's the byproduct.
I think that's the biggest thing too, is when we ask people to walk alongside and we're like, we have this person be baptized, and either they've said, this is a person that I know that I would love to walk with, or somebody that might be new. We always ask them, and I let them know too. I'm like, you don't have to have all the answers. Like, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to feel like it's only the pastor's job to do this. Is like, if you're a couple steps ahead of where this person is, like, we want you to walk alongside together, because you are going to grow together. Even in my personal journey, I walked with a girl, Hannah, and she would ask me questions that I'm like, oh, I've not thought of that before. And so walking through that, it even helped me grow.
Yeah. And in my personal experience, I'm walking beside of 2 guys right now that have been baptized. And you hit on it just a little bit earlier, but tailoring it to the context of where they're at. Yeah. Like my 2 guys were people that found Christ in recovery.
Right.
Because we do a lot of microsites in recovery. We have a very large recovery community here at the church and online.
Absolutely.
And so if a church was considering moving towards more of a relational model of discipleship, I think a key thing for them to learn, at least from our experience, is that you have to tailor it to that environment. Yes. And the wider spread your reach becomes, the harder that becomes.
Yeah.
So I personally would not ever want to go back to a different way of doing discipleship.
Yeah.
Like, we still do classes.
Right.
But now we've got next step guides that are bringing their next steppy into those classes.
Yeah.
We still will do things like Rooted and Alpha and all that good stuff, and we're not knocking those at all.
Right.
But imagine if Rooted was a group of 10 people and 5 of them were walking beside of the other 5 prior to even doing Rooted.
Be huge.
It's a more of a biblical Jesus model of taking individual relationships or small group relationships and then continuing to expand from there.
Yeah.
So the goal for someone, if they come out of the baptistry, they walk beside somebody for this 6-week process, and they know that they have somebody ongoing.
Right.
What's their goal for the person out of the baptistry?
Yeah. So the end goal, not really end, because it's still continuous. It's a journey. But where we would love to get to is to be on mission. And that's a heartbeat of our church, is to find their passion area, find what they love to do, or how they can minister to other people. And so that they in turn would be in that mission area. And then also that they would come back and walk with somebody else, because we want it to be almost a cycle that they've been walked with, and now they're going to walk with somebody else, and it just continues that process.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. We don't know the long term yet. Right. This is something that we started back in December of this past year with the outfitting structure that we talked about last episode. But I will tell you that we've already seen a ton of life change from this. Yeah. And I have no reason to believe that giving numbers, baptism numbers, attendance numbers have been growing simply because we have a bunch of people in our congregation now that have decided, you know what, I'm going to start individually walking beside of people, and we're going to grow closer to Jesus every day together, which is an awesome thing to be a part of.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty much it for this episode, but stay tuned. We're going to try to continue to do these on a weekly basis.
Absolutely.
This is the week of Easter, so if we can do it this week, surely we can do it any other week. But we're excited about what God is doing through this next step guide process and how we're able to use online tools to be able to walk individually beside of people on a daily basis, both in person and online and at microsites. So if you guys want to try something like that out, you're more than welcome to contact us and we'll give you more details. But we want to hear what you guys think about this, and also we want to see how maybe you could use this in your own church. So we're excited to see that. See you guys next week.
See ya.